Well, hello, and welcome to Academy Unscripted. I'm Lauren Duguid. I'm the exhibition designer at the Academy of Natural Sciences, and today I'm talking with Paul Callomon, the collection manager of Malacology.
Hi everybody, Malacology. It's mollusks, it's clams and snails and slugs and squids and octopuses and all that other gross squishy stuff. I'm also in charge of collections of other things that don't have backbones, like corals and sponges and worms and shrimps and crabs and all that other good stuff. So basically everything that you'll find on the seabed that's been there since forever is what I look after.
What got you into this business?
When I was 13, we went to Australia and we were driving up the coast of New South Wales to go somewhere else. And my father probably understood that I was beginning to get a thing for shells. So we stopped in at a fishing port, and anything that they were going to sell, like the fish and the lobsters and the very large shells, which they knew that collectors would want, they'd already put away, and they'd thrown everything else onto the beach just to be washed out again by the tide. Among the stuff they'd thrown on the beach were some very fine shells, and here's one of them, and this is the one that I collected that day. It wasn't really attractive to dealers because it's got a very broken lip here, because it's a juvenile specimen. It's not an adult, so it's very thin. But to me, it was the most precious thing you could imagine, and I still have it. It's not a rare species. There are plenty of these in our collection, but this one has tremendous meaning because it was part of my growing understanding of what I wanted. That's very important. When you are young, if you find something you want, it doesn't matter what it is. The only question that faces you when you then go to school is, are you going to stick with that? What you mustn't do is say, well, I don't see how I can do this, or I want to do it, but I shouldn't. And to any of those children, I would say, look, come to the museum, or come and talk to us, because we understand that. We understand that if you are into bugs, it's not for a logical reason, but that you will always be into bugs. And we're here for you because we're all like that.
Yeah, that is one of my favorite things about the museum, is the passion that people have for each one of their own little disciplines. There's the aspect of, observing the critters out in the world, doing their thing, slithering along, mucusing their way across the rock surface.
Mucusing, yes.
Yeah.
Little devils.
Gliding along.
Yeah.
And then there's the entirely different way of studying things, which is cracking open a cabinet door and looking at a variety of the same critter over and over and over again.
Yeah. So people often ask us, why do we have these gigantic collections that cost so much money to house and take up so much space? And when you go out and you look at things in the wild, you're looking at one thing in one place at one time. And if you have a big field expedition, you might be out in the wild for a couple of months and see a lot of things, but you're seeing individuals in a place at a time. And you could come back over multiple years and see the same thing in the same place at different times, whatever. And so you can, in a lifetime of field work, you can build up a decent body of knowledge. But what if you had hundreds of people doing that? And not only in the place that you've gone to, but in other places nearby and further away. And everything that they saw got recorded. Now, even that would give you a huge body of knowledge. But what if then they all brought those things back? And we kept them, and then we figured out much later on, for example, hey, we can look at the DNA in these things. So let's look at that. Let's find out how they are related. Let's find out what difference it makes that they're from different sides of a mountain. What has this done to them? These are questions that you've got to want to ask. They're not going to lead to a new technology or a new medicine, but they are going to lead to knowledge. So you go to a collection where we've done precisely that. We've put things together by kind that were collected by different people at different times in different places. And these things are placed alongside each other in a way that they never would be in nature. The key understanding is that nature does not keep records. So it's only humans that have to build bodies of evidence that help them at least sleep at night, thinking that they understand the problem a bit better today than they did yesterday.
Okay, now it's time for the lightning round. What is your least favorite word?
It's not actually a word, it's a phrase, and I hate it when people say, of all time. So when they say, that's my favorite, that's the greatest rock record of all time. No, it isn't. And I'll tell you why it isn't, because you haven't lived all time, and nor has anybody else.
What excites you creatively and emotionally?
I don't get excited, and I think that one of the things that characterizes natural scientists is that quite often they have a very narrow emotional gamut, which what that means is that their ups are not very up and their downs are not very down, and they tend to return to equilibrium pretty easily and pretty quickly. They're steady people, and I think that is, you know, thinking about the many natural scientists I've met in my life, the ones who are really manic, who are really up and really down, they don't succeed and they're not happy. So I think there is a linkage there that if your emotional range is quite narrow, it suits you very well to this sort of work, because then you take great pleasure in small things. You know, the distance from neutral to completely happy is really short compared to most people. And as somebody else once said to me, easy to please is the best thing you can say about anybody.
What turns you off?
I think, again, this comes back to the answer to the previous question about having a narrow emotional gamut. If things don't really turn you on, then things don't really turn you off either. You just, you know, there are things you like more than other things, and there are things that you dig more than other things. So I like music a lot. I like all kinds of music, as long as it raises the hairs on my forearm, which is, you know, the standard litmus test. I don't care what it is, but I don't become completely passionate and crazy about it. But it does turn me on.
What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
It would probably be something very similar. It would be fixing up engines, probably fixing up old steam engines, old cars, old motorcycles, stuff like that.
If you could be another animal or a plant for a day, what would it be?
I wouldn't mind being any animal as long as it wasn't a zoo animal.
What is your motto?
There's one that my own boss, Gary Rosenberg, came up with. We don't have time to be efficient.
I might steal that for my own life. What is the most wondrous thing in the natural world to you?
I don't really feel wonder, but I do delight. Sometimes I'll come across something, I'll just say, look at that.
Well, thank you for joining me today, Paul, and thank you all for joining us for Academy Unscripted.